Welcome back to the next installment in our sock knitting adventure. So where we are now is we've knit the leg, we've knit the heel flap, and we've turned the heel. After we turned the heel, we divided the remaining stitches in two and put half of them on one needle and the other half on another needle. Now it's time to pick up the gusset stitches. The gusset is this section here and here. This creates an extra amount of fabric so that we can wrap the sock back around to create, to join the top of the foot here with the bottom of the foot here. So the gusset is that extra bit of fabric that will allow us to, let's see if I can, that will allow us to fill in this space here. Okay, so to pick up the gusset, remember when I said it was so important to slip that first stitch of every single row when we were doing our heel flap? That was so that we could create a selvage edge. And the selvage edge, whether you get pearl beads or whether it's a chain selvage, here I have a chain selvage. You can see I have these little stitches going along the edge. And the magical thing about sock knitting is that this number of chains that I have here is exactly the number of stitches that I need to pick up. So I don't even have to really count or think about it too much, which that's something that I really love in a knitting pattern or in a knitting experience, not having to think about it too much. It's just happening. So I don't generally go in and pick up each stitch like this. A lot of patterns will have you pick up your stitches this way and wrap and pull the stitch up. That's picking up and knitting. I don't do this. What I do instead is pick up from the opposite end and from the back side is I pick up each here's my selvage stitches right here. You can see them. Here they are. Let me get the focus right. Here they are here. So what I'm doing is I'm going to pick up 1/2 of that stitch from I'm at the instep edge. So I'm just going to come along and scoop one stitch and pick up each chain. So in my case it should be 16. I'll pick up 16 stitches here. And now I'll count. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, maybe it's only 15? Or did I skip one? Oh, I missed one right down here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to slide over to the other end and pick it up that way because I'm sneaky. I've actually picked up these stitches in class a number of times. There we are, 16. A number of times, so my yarn's a little stressed out. I apologize for that. Okay, now that I've got my 16 stitches picked up, I better take a peek over here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Maybe it is 15. You know what? Somebody asked me this in class actually. What if I have one more on one side or whatever the it turns out? And my answer was as long as you have the same number of stitches on this gusset and the same number of stitches on that gusset, it will all work out. So don't worry about it too much. So I've dropped off that one extra stitch again because I'm going to pick up 15 there. So 15 and 15. Now what I'm going to do, get this needle out of the way here, is I'm going to knit across these gusset stitches that I just picked up. And what I want to point out is that the stitches are oriented on the needle backwards. See how we have the left hand of the stitch, the left leg of the stitch in front. Normally our stitches would be with the right side on the needle this way, but because of the way I picked them up, they end up on the needle backwards. And in all actuality, that is not a bad thing, because if I were to knit these with the proper orientation, I would get these huge, you could see this big gap right there, and I would have a little row of eyelets along the side of my sock, which I do not want. So what I do is I actually knit these picked up stitches twisted. So I will knit these through the left leg and make sure that those stitches are twisted. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, these 15 stitches. Two. And again, because I've pulled on this so many times, my yarn is even starting to unwind. Three. And split and whatnot. But I'll try to be neat here. Four. Sometimes I'll pull on the stitch to open it up, and then I'll come back on and go through this side, just to help myself if it feels a little too tight. And when we knit around the next round, it's not going to be we're not going to be knitting our stitches twisted. On the next round, they will be oriented properly. And I'm almost there. Now, when I get to the end of the working these gusset stitches here, when I get to the end, I'm going to have to deal with a bit of a gap, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a second. As soon as I get there, and I'm 4 stitches away. This poor sock, totally stressed out. But you know, I'm using superwash wool, and wool is just a beautiful fiber to work with. It takes such a beating, it takes so much abuse, and it still ends up behaving itself and looking beautiful when it's finally all done. Okay, so I've picked up my stitches, and you can see that it's really tight there. That is going to be nice and snug and smooth and flat. And then that's what it looks like on the inside. Very smooth. Okay, now here I am at the end step, and see this big space from here to there? If I just knit across, you know, if I just start working onto the next needle, I'm going to end up with this big hole. You can kind of see it right there. So that would make me very unhappy. So what I want to do is I want to eliminate that hole. And there's a lot of different ways that people do this. Some people pick up an extra stitch. Some people pick up, let me twist that. Some people pick up this running thread here and twist it and then knit it together with the next stitch. That's a very common thing that people do. What I like to do is, since I'm joining this fabric to that fabric, is I like to pick up the stitch below the next stitch from behind, which would be this one, which would be nice if you could see, which would be this one. So let me back up, because I don't know if some people pick up this strand. I don't like to do that because it always ends up gappy for me. So what I do is pick up the stitch directly below the next one from behind. Come back here. I'm grabbing this pearl bead right here. And I'm going to pull this stitch up onto, if that one, oh, there it is. If it doesn't want to cooperate, oh, there it is. Okay, so I have got it. Let me grab that one more time. So I went underneath the running thread here, and I went into the stitch below. Underneath the running thread and into the stitch below right here. It's so hard to see because my yarn and my needles are small. Let me point with my needle. I'm going into this space right here and then picking up that stitch below, and then I'm pulling it up onto the needle. Actually, it belongs on this. It belongs on this last needle. So I pulled it up and I put it onto the needle that where the yarn is attached to. Here's my yarn back here, and all I'm going to do is take my last stitch that I worked from the gusset and pull it over as if to bind off. Okay, so now I pull it nice and tight, and you can see it's tightened up right there. I dropped my needle. Bear with me a second, my needle fell. I gotta go retrieve it. Okay, so that's one option. The other option you can do, like I said, there are many ways to do this. So the other thing that you can do is, let me drop the yarn there. The other thing you can do is actually take the that stitch and knit it instead of binding it off. Let me pull that back up because I just unknit that. You can take a stitch from this side, let's say this one right here, a stitch from this side, and I'm just grabbing this one and put it up. Make sure I grab the right thing. There it is. Okay, that's the pearl bead from one of these two pearls that I have here, and then put it up on the needle and then do a knit two together with my next needle. Knit two. So whichever one you want to try is good. And actually that needs to be a purl two together because my pattern, it starts with two pearls. So I'm purling two together, and now I'm going to work across the instep. Purl two. So let me do that, and then I will meet you when I'm at the other end, and I'll repeat this picking up of a stitch at the corner there because that's kind of tough to see. I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, here I am. Now I have picked up these stitches, and then I worked across the instep here, and now I'm at the other gusset, so I'm ready to pick up these stitches over here. So before I do anything, I am going to take my needle, and just like I did on the other side, I will come over here and I will pick up my 15 gusset stitches, just like I did before. So I will roll my edge so that I could see my chains. See, here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So I'm going to grab them from underneath. I'm just going to 1, 2, 3, 4. Making sure I don't miss any. 4, 5, 6. Alright, it's a lot easier when you're just doing it instead of demonstrating, but meaning when I don't have to hold the fabric at an angle that's easy to see. But I'll just struggle through and grab without splitting. Of course, I've, as I said earlier, I've picked up and dropped these stitches a number of times, so they are really paying me back by being less cooperative than I would like for them to be. Well, here I had a different selvage because I wasn't paying attention, so I have 2 pearl beads there, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to grab those pearl beads. If you do a selvage where you have the pearl beads along the edge, like I discussed in the last sock video that I did, if you haven't watched it, go take a peek. Sometimes I rewatch these things and just laugh and laugh at myself. Sometimes picking up those pearl beads are a little easier than picking up the chains. There we are. So I should have 15. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I do. Hooray. So now, here I am, again with this big gap here that I don't want that to create a hole. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before, and I want to bring up this side of the fabric to join in with this side of the fabric. So I'm going to do the same thing, get the yarn out of the way there, and I'm going to pick up this pearl bead here, this one right here, the one that this stitch is coming out of. I can get under there and get it. There we are. So I've got that stitch right there, and I'm going to pop it onto the needle with my gusset stitches, and I'm just going to knit that one that I just picked up together with the first gusset stitch, because now I've got 16 on here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So got to get rid of that there. So I'm just going to get my needles to cooperate here. Now there's I can fold everything and go in there and knit those 2 together. Six, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, knit 2 together. A weird thing there. Together, and I'm just going to work across these stitches. That's 1, and I'm just knitting here though. I'm not doing any kind of a pattern or anything. stressed out yarn and my little needles. Okay, so that's one. And we've got the same thing going on as before. These are going to be situated with the stitch mount backwards. And I want to make sure that I knit them so that they are twisted. One. Two. I usually do my videos in the morning, and I'm doing this one in the evening, so there's an extra shadow because my lights went out. But I didn't want to wait to upload this video because I know some people are waiting for this demonstration in order to complete their homework. So I was going to wait until the weekend, but I decided to do it now. Next one. And I should be telling this sock, hey, sock, guess what? This is the last time, really, that you're going to get your stitches picked up. This is it. This is the final time. So that I can continue on to the, let's see, that one's all wonky. Make sure it's twisted. Okay. Phew. Let me just count really quick to make sure I don't have any extras or something weird didn't happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yay. Okay, so now this is the needle that was holding those remaining heel stitches from the heel turn. So I'm just going to knit across those. Just a standard knitting, plain knitting across those. I had 9 stitches. And I'm going to work across those 9 stitches, and then I can show you where I'm at. Okay, done. So now I have, let me orient my sock here and I'll show you what has happened here. So I had 9 stitches and 9 stitches on 2 needles after my heel turn, and I was here. So I picked up these gusset stitches, and then I was sneaky. I went ahead and transferred those 9 stitches on so that they would all be on a single needle. Okay, and then I picked up that extra stitch at the corner here and then worked it together with the one from the instep, and I worked across my instep, and then I stopped here. I picked up these gusset stitches, so I had the 2 needles hanging out here. I picked up those gusset stitches. This is what it looks like on the inside with the stitches picked up. And on that side. Okay, and then after I picked up my gusset stitches, then I went ahead and picked up my extra stitch here and worked it together with the first stitch from my gusset. I worked those stitches, and then now I'm back here at the center of the heel. And this is the beginning of my round. So now what I need to do is work around in rounds, and every other round I am going to decrease here and here. A lot of patterns have you put a marker because your stitches will not be, they have you put markers so that you know where to decrease or where the beginning of the round is, but I never use markers because I know where these 2 needles that have the fewer stitches come together, or clearly the bottom of the heel, I know this is the beginning of the round. And then when I'm doing the gusset decreases, they have to happen here. And later on, when we get to the decreasing of the toe, I still don't use markers. I just set my needles up so that it's pretty obvious where the decreases should go. So, and now I have a couple of options. I generally like to knit around one plain round, and then on the following one do my decreases. But just because I want to demonstrate what the decreases look like and how the sequence goes, I'm just going to forego that plain round and just start with my first round. We'll have the decrease in it. So what you do is, by the way, we're still on needle 1, needle 2, and needle 3. And again, my way of doing things sometimes does not match standard patterns or the way that other people do them. This is my own particular quirks that happen to work for me in the way that I process things. And also because I'm a little lazy. I like to take shortcuts. So anyhow, I'm going to work across needle 1. And I'm just plain knitting. I'm not working a pattern or anything. I'm just knitting plain. And it doesn't matter how you're knitting, whether you're knitting continental or if you're knitting English style, but throwing the stitches. You're just working across needle 1. And the idea after you do all of your gusset decreases is to decrease down to your original numbers when you first cast on and first separated your cast on stitches onto your 3 needles. So originally I cast on 64 stitches. I had 32 across the instep and then 16 stitches on each of the other 2 needles. So I will be doing these decrease rounds until I end up with 16 stitches on each of the 2 heel needles. Okay, so I'm going to work up all the way up until I have 2 stitches remaining. And I usually don't even count. I just count when it looks to me like maybe I'm close to the 16. But if you want to keep track, of course you can. You can use one of the clickers or hash marks on paper or whatever you need to do to keep track of how many decrease rounds you've done. And then the other thing to remember is you're not decreasing every single round. You're decreasing every other round. So you will do a decrease round and then you will do a plain round with no decreasing. Okay, so here I am at my 2 stitches. So here I'm going to knit 2 together. So I'm just going to take 2 stitches and knit them together. If I can get in there, they're kind of tight. Get it. There we are. I do tend to knit my socks at a rather tight gauge, so but they wear better when they're knit at a tighter gauge. Wear better meaning they last longer. Okay, so I did my knit 2 together, and now I'm going to work across the instep. And this is actually I have to pay attention because I'm going to carry this lace pattern across. So let me just look to see where I'm at in the lace pattern. Okay, so it's a purl 2, purl 2. That's what it starts out with. And then I need my yarn over should go here, so it will be knit 2, yarn over, slip, knit, pass. I'm staggering the yarn overs to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. So this one was to the left. That tells me that the next one needs to be to the right. And on one side it's knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2, and then on the other side it's knit 2, yarn over, slip, knit, pass. So, knit 2, yarn over, slip, then purl 4. This ribbing pattern is actually just knit 4, purl 4 ribbing, but it's got that little, in the knit columns, it's got this little 4-stitch lace pattern. It's actually pretty easy to memorize and pretty easy to see it once you've worked it a few rounds. And in this class, we also learned how to modify the patterns from flat knitting to knitting in the round, because the directions for this lace pattern were written for flat knitting. But easy adjustments, super easy, really, adjustments to make. Really, really easy. Okay, yarn over, slip, knit, pass, and knit 2. Okay, so I am at the end of the instep, and now I get to come over to the next gusset, and I got a decrease at this corner. So the decrease on this side is slip, slip, knit. Slip, slip, knit is just what it sounds like. Could be slip a stitch as if to knit, slip a stitch as if to knit. Now, if you're a continental knitter or a combination knitter, an alternate to slip, slip, knit could be slip 1, knit 1, pass, slip, stitch over. So slip, slip, knit, let me finish with slip, slip, knit. Slip, slip, knit was slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit. Take your left needle and go through both stitches you just slipped, and then knit them together from that position. Knit them together from that position. Okay, and off. Let me undo that, and I'll do the other, the slip knit pass. So let me get these stitches. The yarn is very forgiving, very forgiving. I'm sorry, yarn, I stressed you out. Okay, so slip knit pass would be just slip the first stitch as if to knit, slip it over without, well, in my case it's hard to not split, it's hard to not split the yarn because it's all stressed out, but slip it over, knit the next stitch, and then pass the stitch that you slipped over the first stitch, like a bind off. So you're coming over and you're pulling the stitch over. And that will give you a left leaning decrease, which is what we want at this corner. The decrease needs to point to the left. I'm going to leave that one as it is, and then I'll just describe one more time what's happening, and then I will leave you to work the remainder of the foot. The foot you're going to just work until it's 2 inches shy of the total length of your foot from heel to toe. So again, you will work the decrease gusset stitches every other round until you've achieved the original number of stitches that you started out with in the very beginning. And once you achieve that number, like in my case it will be 16, so once I end up with 16 stitches on each of these 2 heel needles, then I will just work plain, continue my knitting around and around until I am 2 inches shy of the total length of my foot. I have a large foot. In my case, it's going to be about 7 3/4 inches. Maybe that's not large. Okay. So I've showed you 2 variations of the left leaning decrease, and then on this side you're doing knit 2 together, which is a right leaning decrease, meaning the decrease leans to the right. So one more time just to recap. So what we're doing is we're working around in rounds, round and around and around. Needle one, every other round you'll knit two stitches before, until you've got 2 stitches left. You'll do a knit 2 together, work across the instep, then do a knit, slip, slip, knit, or a knit 1, slip 1, pass, slip, stitch over, work to the end of the round, and then knit 1 round plain. And this is the top of the sock, and then here we are at the bottom. So now what we're doing is beginning to come around and then shape the foot. The foot's gonna come out in this direction. Okay, so the homework for this class actually is to finish the gusset decreasing and get as far along on the foot as you can, because guess what? Next class we're talking about decreasing for the toe. And Kitchener stitch, grafting the toe closed. Okay, happy knitting, and we'll see you next class.